evening, televiewers. Welcome to Prime Hour on My Media Prime. It is another Tuesday edition of the program, and as usual, we're going to be looking at love, relationship, and marriage issues. This evening, we're going to be settling down on widowhood, love life in widowhood, and we're going to be looking at the challenges and how to also consider those who lost their husbands. Do they have a chance to fall in love once again? How should they be treated in the society when we talk love? And do they have the right to fall in love? But how should they even do it? That is going to be the focus for tonight's edition of our Prime Hour with our panelists who are with me in the studio. We are with Dr. Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa. He is a permanent consultant and the national president of the Cameroon Pentecostal movement. He's just coming back fresh from Paris, France. He landed last night. Good evening. The Apostle, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Good evening, Cameroonians, and good evening, my co-panelists. Glad to be here today again, and we have a very interesting evening. God bless you.
Apostle, you look fresh.
Yeah, the climatic condition in Europe is different from that here. So at least away in Europe for a week, the difference is clear. Something must reflect on me to show that I left this continent. Okay,
we also are in the company of Reverend Mrs. Anyere Akwi, who is a pastor with the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon. Good evening, glad to have you.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening, fellow panelists. And it's another beautiful day on the hills of Mbange, and we are here to share concerning relationship issues and precisely the situation of widows. Glad to be here again.
We are also with Mr. Emmanuel Changon, who has become a household name already. When we talk of Tuesday's edition of the program, he is an expert in the domain of our discussions on Tuesdays. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard, and dear panelists and viewers. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, we have the call her. She's known as the Lovett Inspirational Show. Yes, followed by so many persons on social media. She's going to share our platform tonight to also help educate our audience on the topic on the discussion tonight. Good evening. Glad to have you coming all the way from Yaoundé, the nation's political capital.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening to all the panelists. It is a pleasure to be in your midst today.
Okay, we also are hoping to have contributions from Bamenda, Northwest Regional Capital, from Mrs. Asanji Yvette, who should be on standby. Dr. Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa, I'll start the program with you. Yes, as a widow, do we have all the right chances and everything to fall in love, and when should we start thinking of falling in love again?
Yeah, Marcelo, this is a very interesting topic, and I think a lot of widows will be redeemed today. They will definitely get redemption from this particular program, because a lot of widows have been stigmatized in the society. Some have been rejected, some have been looked upon as betrayers. But unfortunately, it's because people don't have a proper understanding that loneliness is more of a curse than widowhood. And if we understand the biblical, the legal, the traditional concept of what the law says concerning a widow, that's the only time that they are permitted to start another life again, if they have the opportunity. I think the decision for a widow not to engage in love again should be personal. It's not guided by any principle, whether traditionally, whether religiously, whether legally. There is no guiding principle from any religious background that stops a widow from falling in love again. So women may be too much in love with their husbands and decide not to fall in love anymore after the man dies. That's their personal decision. But considering the protocols that govern the society, I don't think a woman is forbidden to fall in love again in case she loses the husband. First and foremost, widowhood is not a curse. Number two, widows should not be stigmatized. They are only unfortunate people amongst many people. And some people also even get deliverance when they become widow. Some women, when their husbands die, that's when they are liberated. You may look at that widowhood to some people as a kind of challenge, but to some person it's redemption. When a woman is in the hand of a kind of tormenting husband, when the man dies, that's redemption. she has the opportunity to fall in love again and to find somebody who will give her the love and care she never experienced with the previous husband. So it's just the societal concept about widowhood that is trying to make people feel like a widow is somebody that does not deserve to fall in love. Age may also be a hindrance to somebody falling in love again. A woman who has grown about 60 years, 70 years and has had her children, at that level she has to just stay back and take care of the grandchildren. Falling in love again is not a crime, but it should be out of her own violation. And then in addition to that, before I drop the mic, widows should be given the opportunity like any other citizen and any other member in the society to enjoy life once again, because life does not stop when a man dies. Life continues.
Life continues, and Dr. Apostle Ambi thinks that a woman has that latitude, a widow, has a latitude to fall in love again, and nothing actually, especially looking at the biblical prescriptions that limit her, because the Bible says that, okay, what frees you to get into love again is if your husband dies. Yeah, but we have so much cultural underpinnings around a widow who may have to live under the shadow of the a fallen husband for the next 10, 20, 15, 30 years, because the family of the widow would always say she's our wife and would want to monitor her. Reverend.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. You see, with this issue of widowhood, recent studies shows that about 50% of widows, because of social isolation and loneliness, will face dementia. 29% of that studies shows that most of them will suffer from a stroke and other inflammatory diseases, and even more so suffer from heavy and severe depression. And so if these women do not find company after marriage, it will be very detrimental to their health. Coming back to the cultural issues, we have the widow's rights that many of our traditions and customs do propagate, and most of them necessitate that these women for about 3 years or more should not have any carnal relationship with another man. They have to put particular dresses for at least 6 months up to a year, eat in a specific plate, sleep on the floor, and all of that. And most of these obnoxious cultural practices, I call them obnoxious because sometimes they are detrimental to the widow's health, are being propagated by senior widows in the same household who claimed they had faced a similar situation, and so these widows must face them. It is even more heavy on the teen widows. Teen widows are those who were given into marriage at a very tender age, and most of them were given to older men who would die and leave them, and sometimes leave them with about 2 or 3 children to cater and nurture for without a job. And it is very, very painful that they have to go through that socio-emotional trauma as well as the cultural aspect. And that is why Paul is advising in 1 Corinthians that when a young widow is being sustained after mourning the husband, she has the right to remarry so that she can have a shelter for her children. That's a biblical principle though, and I think it should work for us today, so that there will be a shelter for her. However, where I decline this is where we practice levirate. Levirate marriage is when a late husband's brother inherits the wife of his late brother. And when this levirate marriage comes in like this, there are a lot of torments, because the man comes in, takes the property of his late brother, and claims that he is doing everything for the sake of his late brother. They don't even sit to check on how this woman's emotions are. There is that sense of guilt, and they may feel that they are cheating on their late husbands, especially in a case where they were sincerely in love with their late husband, and now they are forced to be inherited. If it is of her own volition that she's accepting, it is different. But if she has to be inherited as if she's some piece of property, that is where I vehemently say no. because at this juncture she has no say. So culturally, sometimes the impacts on the widow is mostly negative, because at the end of the day they end up in more trauma than the emotional trauma that they have accumulated during the stress of planning for the burial, the slangs, the noise in their ears, and finally some will come that they are giving them good advice, and there are some things widows should not hear. It was meant to be, it could have been worse than this. Take heart, he is in some place, but at that point they are not interested, and some people just start addressing them as widows. Most of the widows do not appreciate the fact that they should be called widows, because they are still living in a state of denial. There are 8 stages of grief, will not go there, and when they are living in the state of denial, which is one of the stages of grief, and you give them those names, it is like you are nailing them, drilling the final nail onto their heads to condemn them. So before I drop, some of these cultural practices are not the best because they do not favor the widows. Having you are already in stress and you are facing the demise of a loss, and you have to sleep on a very thin or even a mat on the floor for several days in the name of mourning your husband. It can instead lead to respiratory infections, respiratory tract infections, and other problems. So I want to decry the fact that if there is still a culture which is practicing such acts, it is not the best, especially the ideas of isolating them, making them to be lonely, shaving their hair and putting them in special dark rooms, leading them to the stream to bathe early in the morning. I've been a witness. I've worked in some of those areas. I've seen they do not cross the bridge on their own. They have to hold their hands and they move. You see them in the market, they are with a particular dress, and they don't go to the market for like up to about 6 months, and so on and so forth. It is still going on, and I want to thank these wonderful panelists are here to also sensitize against such stigmas, so that at the end these widows will have a cause to smile. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Chango, yes, when you become a widow after the demise of your husband, should society treat you differently? Do you become something different simply because you lost a husband?
Thank you, Mr. Leo. I think that there is need for us to look at it from a certain civilization, a certain culture, a certain way of living of a community, not only aspect of widow marriage, death itself, and you know, the handling of different harvest seasons, planting seasons, and so on. A community cannot be wise in all those aspects and just be stupid in one. There are rituals that must be practiced in certain situations, and the description and the analysis of pain should not be done always by the other person on the other side. You can't be sure you understand another person's pain than the person, or the wisdom behind pain. And pain physically is not necessarily destructive, because we have many situations where when we make an achievement, we look for a more challenging situation to prove that we can go beyond it. The separation of marriage is supposed to be a very strong aspect. You can see just divorce itself, what it can bring as trauma or tension, disruption. And bereavement, conjugal bereavement, of course, is certainly an unexpected disruption, which brings in a lot of pain and frustration, not only for the woman, but for the children as well. I want to say here that we are dealing with somebody, like Ma was saying, going through the stages of separation and the anxieties that come with them. Psychologically, this person is not very prepared to handle some of the issues that are there. So community sets in to manage that. If the process is going to end up with a happier, free, stronger person, we have to look at those traditions. It's not the problem of what is done there, but we have to look at the wisdom. Not only, sometimes spiritually, we need to go through physical pain, and we come out elevated spiritually, and we have some authority to move on to the next stage with freedom from the guilt that may have come, because we have done a process that liberates us from some of the reflections that may have been hanging around in the community relating to the death of our partner. So some of those processes are meant to free us from any other implications that double-minded people with personal interest may want to come in and contaminate our lives later on. So it is very important that it is looked specifically, because what I want to mean is that Western literature has come in to talk about African tradition always in terms of how we hate and kill and humiliate and torture each other. But some of our rights are actually healing and liberating rights, but they may go through physical pain, just like in many other things we do in life, just like in challenges, like somebody who is wanting to achieve a higher height goes through some torture psychologically and physically, but they are celebrating the victory. So some of these traditions should be looked specifically and what goes with them and who are those who accompany. But I know that the situation of bereavement, especially when a woman loses the husband, is greatly influenced by the fact that from the beginning, marriage is like, I have attained adulthood, I am capable of being a man, and I can take care of a family. So a woman comes in as a subject somehow. And so from that reflection, most of the things that happen, especially if the man leaves before, the wife is first like suspected. And even if she's not suspected, depending on her relationship with the in-laws, because she is supposed to be closer to the in-laws than her own family after marriage to show that she's a good woman. And if by some chance those in-laws are not that close or are envious of that relationship or not truly in accord with their brother, or the chances are that she will now not suffer bereavement because of tradition, but because of the special agenda of the in-laws. So in this case, yes, there is no circumstances where you should bring pain, humiliation, and break down the life of any living person. Nobody has the right to do that. But let us look at tradition and rituals based on how community becomes stronger, staying together and protecting their species. In that light, we should be able to make the separations and not look at it from a very general point of view.
Yeah, but where do you place her love life in what you just described?
Her love life is suffering at this phase because of the separation and the anxiety. And of course, traditions take security of that situation in a place where a family and a community is working well. You will see that tradition will always protect life, and especially the woman, and because generally the man goes ahead with the spear and the woman follows behind with the children, which means tradition understands that we have to protect. But what I'm trying to say that in this situation there are other manipulations that are not official. The general tendency is that we may have more cases of that, or the pain of these bad behaviors from people who have second interest may be so loud that it calls for much attention. But generally you would see that good traditions, and we have a lot of good African traditions, protect life, protect the woman and the children. And of course that journey is meant to be accompanied by the eldest women of the community, who are certainly therapists, because you look, they are the people who are able to let you go through that process in a way that you don't feel alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are someone who has been talking. I don't know how many widows have approached you, or you have lived experiences. For you, how long should a lady mourn the husband before thinking of falling in love again? Because from indications, by the time the husband dies, you have guys who are already around, especially the family.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. I want to say here that a widow should be very careful, because if you rush into another relationship, society might start thinking that you even have a hand in the death of your husband. I want to believe that when you get married to someone, you are so close to that person, you didn't expect to lose your husband. So it happens abruptly that a man dies. It takes time for you to heal. So after healing, before you can fall in love again. So widows should be very careful before falling in love, and they should also understand, especially those that have children already, because I've had to cancel cases. For example, I had a guy, a student who was failing in his examination. I got to talk to him. I realized that the father died, and then the mother started bringing another man to the house. So this boy told me that he could not withstand the that another man, he's seeing another man with the mother, that he's even imagined that maybe when the father was alive, maybe they had an affair, and then again he was so much in close to the father, so much so that when he sees another man around his mother, he is feeling like the mother is betraying the father. So widows this is also something that they have to consider. And if you want to fall in love again, you have to really take your time and strategize. Consider your children, especially those children that are mature already, because it is not easy for you to stand in front of your child and present another person again. This is your another father. Your father is no longer there. Your father is no more. This is another father. So you at least take time to mourn your husband. You heal from the process to then before falling in love again. So much so that you not just rush into another relationship just to like get another man to cover up the gap. And if you get into that kind of a relationship, you find out that you are still missing your husband. Sometimes especially when you have difficulties with the present man, you sit back and like you are regretting, if it was my husband, I wouldn't have been going through this. It's because you did not really take out time to heal from there. However, I want to encourage society to take it easy on these widows, because it's not easy. Being a single mother, having to shoulder everything, you don't have somebody to share your pain with, even share your moments of joy. You do not have, like, to be lonely is more than, in fact, it's very bad. So I encourage society to take it easy on them. I don't know why society sometimes people tend to think that if somebody loses the husband, that person should not get married. Meanwhile, another person who divorces the husband is still alive. People consider you getting married again. People are looking at it as if it is normal. People have to understand that when you are a widow, you are emotionally stable. Why? Because you have experienced what marriage is all about. You can communicate better, and unlike somebody who has not been married before. So sometimes you can even manage situations more than someone that is just coming into marriage. Just to encourage, if anybody is watching, that a widow is not your fault, it's not a crime. I've had to talk with people, like I spoke with one woman, and she told me she has had advanced. The husband died. It has been for about 10 years, but each time she wants to make a move, she's feeling like she's about to betray the husband. That is there, especially when the both of you, when the man was a good man, when both of you were close, you always have this feeling like, oh, I'm about to betray my husband. It's like, but we also have to understand that we can no longer turn back the hands of time. The man is of late now. The man is of late. For me, it's just to lay a good foundation. Make sure that you strategize very well, and be careful not to get into the wrong hands, because it becomes very painful when you are a widow. You get married to the wrong person who will keep reminding you that maybe. And just like and some people are so fortunate, so some women are not fortunate that because somebody will lose the husband and then the husband gets to die again, people start looking at you as if you are a witch. Why do men keep getting to you that? Like, so sometimes it's a really difficult situation. However, I encourage widows to fall in love again. If the timing is, if it is appropriate, they happen to meet the right partner, and if they think that falling in love is going to help them, because sometimes some people prefer to even be like that, especially when you are already age is advanced, you prefer to be like that. But if you think it's necessary, why not?
Okay. If you think you really need it, this sense of feeling attached to your late husband and the feeling of betraying your late husband, how do you self-detach?
Two things are involved with such feelings. First is that the people might have had a very serious bond, somehow like a covenant. Because people enter into it, means the man is around. They can tell that I still feel the man around me. You don't feel any man, you are hallucinating. That's just the simple truth. And if at all you don't intend to get married, it should be a decision that you have made. It shouldn't be as if you feel condemned to getting married. Gone are the days where when you get married after your husband dies, they will start pointing fingers at you, thinking that, oh, probably you are the one that killed the man and you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody else. We know situations where women kill their husband because they want to spend time with their boyfriend or some other lover. But in the case where you know you don't have any guilt, you are guiltless, I advise with all sincerity, take your time, mourn your husband, because African society mourns. They will tell you put on black for 6 months, put on black for 1 year. Once you are done with that mourning period, I advise you start thinking and giving yourself the opportunity again to relate, to interact, to associate with people. Sometimes the fear of widows falling in love again or remarrying is because sometimes their husband leaves so much wealth behind. Some persons lock into the lives of these widows because of the wealth. They want to enter their life and penetrate them and then access these riches of the man, exploit them, get their own share, and then depart. Sometimes when the children also have grown, matured, it becomes very difficult for them to accept somebody else to come and rule over their father's empire. So the children also become a hindrance. Sometimes in-laws, for instance, the man was a wealthy man and he dies, and then their brothers are eyeing the property. You, the widow, you are there. They will not accept you to get married to somebody else to come and enjoy their brother's property, because in normal circumstances, the law permits the woman to inherit the husband's property because it's joint property. If at all they signed a monogamous marriage with joint property, then the property becomes the woman's properties. And then unfortunately, you can see somebody comes into that kind of relationship and want to amass that wealth that their brother has worked. In African society, witchcraft will be involved, other activity will be involved, harass and intimidate the woman and make sure she stays like that. So for such reasons, sometimes family members, sometimes children in a family, they will stand as hindrance from that woman getting married. To some extent, they have a point. But to be sincere, if a woman wants to fall in love again after she loses her husband, there's nothing absolutely wrong with it. You may fall in love. Me as a Christian, I would advise marriage. But some persons may want you to get into a relationship without being married, for reasons being that if at all you legalize a relationship with somebody, the man may inherit your husband or your late husband's property. All this put together are some of the hindrances where they can block. But I want to advise every widow that lost the husband that if you are still young and you have the opportunity to still start up a relationship again, please, it's good. It's God who said in the scripture that it is not good for a man to be alone. It's also not good for a woman to be alone. We heard from Reverend that most of these widows who are lonely, they end up developing dementia. Some of them end up becoming very sorrowful, some commit suicide. I know of pastors who have died, left their wives. It didn't take long, the wives also followed. Because of that loneliness, there's a vacuum. It depends the bond, it depends the covenant, it depends the depth of relationship that two parties have that determine how each can stay after they lose their partner. I also know men who have refused to get married again after losing their wives, widowers.
Okay. Yes, Reverend Akwi, there is this issue where the wife is considered in our African setting as a property that belongs to the family of a man. Now, this woman is expected to fall in love and into another family. How do you work this out, especially if you were married to a family that is wanting to have you as theirs?
Okay, thank you. Going from what Papa said concerning the African ideals of culture, some are not as obnoxious as we think. Some are actually guiding principles, because in every culture it did not just come from space nor a vacuum. Some are actually guiding principles to improve on the society. So even when I was talking about the levirate marriage, my first point I was tilting towards Christianity. But when we want to come to the typical African setup, I would not consider the woman as a property. Rather, when a man, say the brother of the late or of the deceased, is given to the woman, it's as a bit of continuity to continue that family. If they had, say, the first marriage had no child, or say 1 or 2 children. Secondly, if the woman is given to the brother, it's because they look at the woman to be vulnerable and she needs protection, and to be protected of her vulnerability as a woman, she is given to that brother. It's a two-sided coin. I will finish with this part, I get to the next. And thirdly, also, if a woman is given into marriage again after becoming a widow, especially with customs and traditions that practice the matrilineal culture, it is believed that they want to preserve the properties of that said family. And furthermore, it is also meant to protect the children of that particular family in question. At this juncture, we would not want to consider the woman to be a property, but an integral part of that family and that community in particular. However, to go to the other side of the stream, if greed sets in and this woman now is considered as a property in quotes, is because some of these men, especially I'm dwelling now on the levirate marriage, some of these brothers want to accrue the property of their late brother because either they had been previously envious or they were looking for a means, and even at the man's demise could have occurred because of the said brother, because he has been looking at the wife and what he has accrued. Now when this greed now comes in, they are bound to say out of base selfishness that they own you because you were their brothers and now you are theirs. They paid your bride price, and because of that bridal wealth, you are part and parcel of their family. This is just specificities, and it has to do with the human nature of greed. Another aspect is because they consider that the woman may go astray. So according to them, they are putting on her an enclosure, telling her she's a property, telling her you belong to me. Being overly possessive makes them to, according to them, have an impact on the woman that she may not want to look outside. And thirdly, still out of greed and base selfishness, any man who calls a woman a property means the man has not been oriented towards the fact that a woman is a helpmeet, a woman is a companion, a woman is a partner, whether she is recently married or she has been widowed. Overall, coming to our African culture, any cultural norm which does not help to improve the status quo of the society is not the force to reckon with. Rather, anyone that will crush the woman who is already traumatized is not the best. Yes, those mothers may be there to help you. Some come with good reasons to take care of your loneliness, to be with you for that 6 months that has been allocated, that it will be the time of your mourning before you change and remove your sackcloth or your black. Yes, some come there to show love and understanding, but there are some vicious ones, because we live in a vicious circle, who will come there to tell you that I went through a harsher situation. Who do you think you are? You must go through all these norms that I went through. So Mr. Leo, is sometimes, generally, most customs are there to help, but out of human greed and selfishness, some come in to thwart the raison d'etre, to thwart the real aspects of culture, because they want some particular goal or to achieve something that will only help them. And so the poor woman is in that situation, asking a lot of questions. Where did I go wrong? Did I make a wrong choice of a husband? But it is not about her nor her children. It is about those around her, surrounding her with different intentions. Some may be there for love, for care and understanding, but most often those who come are looking at the properties her husband has left, but they forget to know that those properties are for the children. And anybody who is judicious and conscious will know that if you are coming to remarry this lady, you should be able to take care of her totally and completely. Likewise, she takes care of you, and not overly looking at what the husband left. What if the husband did not leave anything, and what if he squandered everything before dying? Are you coming because you care or because you've seen something? So culturally, I still insist that norms that will foster life are a force to reckon with. Cultural norms that are detrimental to life, I think that it's high time we shun them.
It's high time we shun them. But if you are just talking from a theoretical perspective, now this is a lady who finds herself in a situation, in a family like that, and maybe does not find love in one of the brothers, who may be eyeing the property of the fallen brother. How do you break loose of this family if you were to fall in love again with some other person out of this family?
We always advise as counselors, first of all, at the immediate demise of your husband, administrative letters are supposed to be made. First of all, most husbands must do justice by making sure sure that they get married legally to their wives. And if they have chosen joint properties, there is no way in this modern time that somebody will want to reclaim what he does not own. So immediately your husband dies, as he's being buried, I know will sometimes are read a year after, 6 months later, but what is very primordial is the letters of administration, because once those letters of administration are made, people cannot just encroach into what you and your husband had. Secondly, a family meeting is to be held so that there you declare your stance. I may not want to remarry, or at least not now. I want to take care of my children. I want to make sure that they become people tomorrow. Some people, they become those that we can, that can even have something to eat tomorrow, even if they will not give me, before I think about having a companion again. Or I just want to cater for my children. When you make your stand known, your vulnerability is reduced, and those property mongers will not chase after you, because you've made your stance clear. And also be sure that you are there with the family's lawyer. It's unfortunate that maybe many families may not be able to afford it, but I believe that there are also good family friends in the family, friends of good standing, that can stand for you during such family meetings against those mongers, as I put, who may want to come because they are after the properties. This is now being realistic, because if you do not have such meetings, such sessions, you sit and draw conclusions at your own corner, know that you can be embarrassed. Make sure that all the land documents, your marital status, that's the certificates that are drawn at the court registry, at the court, yes, should be with you, or should be in the position of somebody that maybe you looked up to, a pastor, a lawyer, or somebody in the family that you could trust, not necessarily within the family setup, maybe a friend or somebody that could always come back after the period of grief and say, here you are, you can have them at this point. Because if you don't have those things and it falls into the hands of one of those unscrupulous fellows, as soon as they pick it, know that they will be going after your properties. Even if they don't inherit you, they will want your properties. That's definitely true. So we need to be conscious about this.
Okay, yeah, you want to?
Yes, I want to fill in from where what the Reverend is saying, to advise people to always do the right thing. That's why I talk a lot about cohabitation. I encourage people to do the right things, because it becomes complicated when your husband dies and you've been living for several years but you are not legally married. It makes it easier for the in-laws, for the supposed in-laws now, to step in and then collect everything. But in a situation where you are legally married, you are in possession of all the documents, it becomes you make it easy on yourself. I want to say that tomorrow is pregnant and no one knows the sex of the pregnancy, so it's better you lay a good foundation, go through the right procedure and get married legally, so just so that if anything should happen tomorrow, you will be covered. What if you have been living with a man for about 10 years and that man happens to die, and you don't have any legal document that proves that you own anything, you don't have anything that shows that you had joint property, it makes it very easy. If you had bad in-laws, they'll just step in and then they'll collect everything from you.
So even the man had a previous marriage.
Yeah, but what you guys are talking about, is the property of the fallen husband, right?
Supposedly both of them.
Yes, but I'm looking more about the love life of, that's the focus of this program. This lady is in such a family and may necessarily not want to settle down with a family relation of the husband and wants to move on, loving somebody out of the family. How should that process go?
If I have to say something, that most of the things that happen when we die depend on what we were doing when we were alive.
Okay.
And so it is very important when you are getting into a marital relationship with somebody, you try to, I know love is like crazy and drives you fast to 1, 2, 3 things, but the real foundation that carries a long-term or a life relationship needs another approach. And that's why counselors are there, or pre-marital counselors are there. What is important here is that you should know about the customs of the tradition in which you want to get yourself involved. Like I said, you get into marriage in Africa knowing that you become a family member of your husband's family. And to show that you're a good wife, you easily expect them to be the first to intervene when there is a crisis in your home, because your family will come in as an intrusion, except there is a crisis and they have no choice but to come and save their daughter. Normally, your in-laws are the ones to show up first whenever there's a problem with your husband, yourself, or your children, because they are now your new family. In most cases, it's not the case, especially when your husband is not in a very good relationship with their own family. So these are the things that, as a woman, you should be looking at this. No matter how modern Africa has become, the back of the minds of people are the most disturbing. Like we say, the part you don't see, that's the bottom of the iceberg. It's the one that is at times most detrimental. The tip, you see it and you underestimate what is under. So no matter what are written in laws and papers and books, everybody can read, but the things that go in the dark, under the sea, they can be very disruptive because they are difficult to manage. Like you say, it is an asymmetrical war. You don't really know who is your enemy. So here I'm just trying to say that it's good to discuss about that when you are still alive. I mean, if any man is worried because the wife wants to know what will happen if you die, just like the husband wants to know, what do I do if you die? These are evident. These are things that happen and will happen. A beautiful relationship in which we discuss those things. And it is very important that you don't believe that somebody wants you dead or is thinking about you dead, because as a matter of fact, these things can happen. It doesn't matter at what age, and so life has to continue in the best interest of that couple. Yes, the relationship you enjoy with your partner will prepare you on how to manage it. If you are in a challenging relationship, you then know that you have difficulties when this partner goes away, because most of the people you're supposed to depend on, especially if they are in-laws, will not believe in you. So you have to be in a challenging situation. So prepare for that as a strategy of life, because your existence or the survival of your existence is first your responsibility before third party come into the show. It is very important. Let us know, in some relationships, the husbands will tell you, my family, as you see, you can't trust them. In a situation like this is what I want you to do. This is where I want you to go. I would love men who really care about their wives to discuss these things with them. It is very important because, as I say, they will handle a situation they have never handled before, especially if they have just lost for the first time. What happens after the man goes away? No woman can predict her ability to manage the situation with balance and with composure. You can't know how it will be. So it's good while you are alive to know where you can look for refuge if it cannot be guaranteed in the family. But I am saying, remember, it is your right to love again. We go into a relationship because we know the good that comes from that relationship, so it can happen again, and it can be better than what you have. This is now a psychological problem that will be resolved progressively, like our counselor sister was saying. It's very important that you understand that that possibility exists, but we don't need it to be a subject of discussion when you are bereaved, because at that point you have more challenging issues with yourself, management of the loss, the anxiety link, and then of course children and the state in which they are, at what ages they are, and what challenges they may be facing, health factors that may be related with before the incident or because of the incident, those issues that may come up that you have to address to stay balanced becomes a priority. So thinking of a relationship comes when some of the tides of the loss are dropping. It is a right. If you are feeling guilty, it is not called for. You need mental assistance, you need psychological assistance, because you don't need to feel guilty, because the needs that brought you into a relationship are still in your physiological and your psychological body. The desire to have a partner, I see the death of your partner does not kill them, and it is normal human life to respond. It's just like you cut off a branch from a tree and the other branches say they are not going to keep growing. It doesn't make sense. It is in their nature to grow while the root is still receiving water and nutrients from the soil. So you are still a living being. The aspects of a living being are still functional in you. It is but normal that you respond to them. If you are not, you need assistance according to the different specifications of your challenge. And of course, if it is your desire, you must show that not being married makes you a happier person, more balanced person, and a more efficient contributor to yourself and your society.
I I wanted to also add to what he's saying, by saying that the caliber of a man you want to introduce at that point will determine how the family will react. When you bring a gold digger, they can be quick enough to judge and know this man is coming for our brother's wealth. But there are some men that when you present them, they will look at those men like this is somebody that can even protect our brother's children.
What if the brother was broke himself?
That's what I'm saying, that we should not only be saying that the man can be coming for the world. It could also be that the man who died was a poor person. So another man that is coming to take a widow could be a way out for that widow, maybe to even take care of the children that your brother left behind.
Does it really matter what the family considers? Because this widow is an adult. Should your family, or maybe you're married, I guess, should the family of your husband or your family decide on who you should fall in love with?
We are not really talking about decision, but you can also dismiss the fact that if there are children, because you consider your children, you have children for your late husband who is their brother, that relationship stays. So except it's in the case where you didn't have a child for the man, but in the case where you have children for your husband who is their brother, those children will need their uncles and for like forever. So they need a say in whatsoever it is for you to move on.
Okay, the uncles will have to decide, or what?
Not deciding, but at least the foundation. I think they have something.
They have to give their blessing.
Because according to my tradition, when you are married and you want to remarry, the property, the things that you're coming to pay at that point, you're giving to the former husband. The things that the other person paid. So you're coming to replace those things that were given, because you cannot take from somebody and then you take again.
Which means that if I understand now, a widow to some extent is tied down to the family because the Bible says she's liberated, but culturally
she's tied down because of children, properties, bride price, and all of that. But at the end of the day, should a woman bring another man into the former husband's home or to inherit her property? Of course not. She should rather move to.
I'm saying the question stands here that there are tendencies for the brothers to wanting to keep her in the family circle. One of the brothers may want to keep her as the wife.
If he deserves.
I'm sure there's something like that
exactly.
in the Bible.
Or if she loves the brother.
But the question is, what if she chooses to move on away from the family? She wants to live her life.
Then she has to recruit.
Can I come in?
Yes.
Okay. If the woman wants to live her life,
she wants to move on.
The late husband's property belongs to the children. Let her share the property to the children and move on with her life. She has a life. Her life is not her children. Her life is not the late husband's family. She has a life. That life is determined by her decisions. I don't think because she's attached to a family, she will go through widowhood throughout her life because she's married to a family. I don't think because she has children, she's bound to remain a widow forever. If the husband left property behind, I'm sure this property was left because of the children. Let her share the property to the children, even if they are not yet matured. Put it in their name. Move on with your life. The fear is that let this new man not come and claim what he did not labor for. That's the first thing. Secondly, two circumstances occur here for widowhood. Number one, if unforeseen circumstances kill the man or natural elements kill the man, but there is a widow who killed her husband, that's another case. Such a person will kill the man and fulfill her dreams and desires, that no matter what the family says, society says, she will engage into what she wants to do. We have seen women who have seen how rich their husband is, they don't love the man, they kill the man and go after a younger guy. They will bring that guy into that property. Before your very eyes, you will see them enjoying the world in your very presence. So there are two categories of widow we are analyzing here. There are widows who were in love with their husband, unforeseen circumstances took away the man. In a case like that where children are involved, parties involved, we advise the mother, if you want to move on with life, let the late man's property be divided to the children, and if at all they are not children, then take your own share and give the rest to the brothers. Then you can move on with your life, because you cannot be caged. For instance, if a man dies when you are in your 30s, are you going to stay till 60? I wanted
us to look at the age factor also.
Yes, 80 to 90. A woman at that age, 30 years, becoming a widow, she has all the opportunity to get married again and start life all over. And if at all the family tries to hold her down, if it is property, share the property and give theirs, and then find your way, because you have to start life again all over. That loneliness is a very serious challenge. But not in a case where a woman voluntarily poisons her husband because she's looking for freedom. There is somebody outside she wants to bring in. She eliminates this man and then bring, because those are things that happen in the society. In such a situation, we are going to be preaching, telling their stories, because the woman already has an agenda for taking away that man out of the way. You understand? But not in the case where people are fully in love, they have children, they have relations. If that decision to fall in love again is practically hers, it has nothing to do with in-laws or whatsoever. And if somebody wants to marry her, according to some traditions, they will go and refund the bride price. The man comes and take over the place of the previous person. But some traditions don't believe in that. If you want to go, you can go and get married. But a woman should not remain a widow forever because the husband dies. Before she ever met that man and got married to him, she had been with other men. So the impression that somebody has to stay as a widow because the husband died is a very, 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 very big mistake.
Okay. What of the situation of, because all of what we are saying here is, okay, the children, the family. What if you were to lose your husband at the age when you are 23, 24, 25, 26, 28? Now, you have to stay on till you are 60, 70 because you lost your husband?
Of course not, Mr. Liu. If you are still young and tender, you have every right to move on with your life. If you've mourned your husband, because we cannot really allocate some mourn for a year, some 2 years, 5 years, depending on the situation and your emotional stability and stamina, I would advise that if your husband dies when you are a young widow, you should, and most often the younger women may have just a child or two, and you have the right to procreate, you have the right to continue with your life, because if you sit like that and you are waiting for years, time waits for no one, except otherwise that is your decision that you want to stay like that, you don't want to get married. When men are not coming to ask your hand in marriage, then you can stay put. But if you have the opportunity to remarry, I do not flinch or blink to say that you can remarry, because you are still young and you are still emotionally very stable and you have a life to give. And marriage, like we know, is not just for the sake of it, it's companionship. I talked of dementia, I talked of other inflammatory diseases, I talked of stroke and the percentages when we just started, that weighs down widows because of social isolation and loneliness. And so if you are lonely and somebody has shown interest and you also care about that person, I think it's but normal that you should try your hand in the relationship. But I would plead, like sister said, to take it slow, because it is very normal. There is this tendency that you may want to always think about your husband and try to make comparisons. So the gap should only be in a case where you have to melt down the emotions you had for your husband. And psychology says that for the pain of heartbreak to go away, it takes at least 2 years or 1 year, 6 months. So if at that time you think that the pain is ebbing and the scars are there and finally they are fading, you can settle down. And I also want to crave that if you truly care for this young lady in question, also understand that she'll be bound to make comparisons. My husband used to do this, used to do that, and at this point in time too, she's still trying to grapple with the fact that she had a loss and now she wants to move ahead. There is no reason to stay put, except, like I said, the men are not coming. But if they are showing interest and you are also, the pain of the emotional breakdown is ebbing, I think it's high time she also takes the next step, which may be courtship, to study the next person in question, and then probably it will lead to marriage by God's grace. There is no need to sit and regret and ask yourself a lot of questions or go through that pain of regret because you were mourning. After the mourning period has passed, and only we or those who are going through that situation know when they feel that it's time to move on. I would advise that if you feel that it's time to also move on, you can get professional help so that they talk to you and help you to finally break down, to finally step out of your wounds so that they will dry completely and you face the next step of your life. So I would advise that if you are still young, or even if you are an older widow, statistics shows that only about 22% of younger widows remarry, then about 10 to 20% of older widows, for the reasons that older widows feel that they are already of age, they have to take care of their children and grandchildren, they want to mourn their husbands and keep their image to heart. There is no need to settle down. But the younger widows who are still filled with steam and pomp can still settle down, but don't make the mistake of hearing and then you fall into a situation that you may live to regret. I would advise that remarry, but take your time.
Okay, remarry, now take your time. If you were to decide to remarry, I love it. How do you do? Or you were to decide to fall in love again, mostly for the situation where the widow is still very young. What do? You call?
It's always advisable to seek advice from experts.
Yes, but you are married to a family. Do you call the family to inform them that I have to move on, I'm moving away from the family, my dedication, my love is now with some, or how does it happen?
Because in as much as we want to avoid this aspect of your life is not tied down by the former husband's family, you cannot also move on without informing them.
Yeah, but what should you do? If you were to advise somebody who's in that situation, what would you tell them? So
it depends on the relationship that that person has with the other family. If you had a cordial relationship with the family, maybe through a family meeting, you could inform them, or maybe there's an elder in the family. You think you can pass the message through that elder person, and it depends on the relationship that you have with the other in-laws.
Okay, so you tell them and you walk. Is that what you tell the doctor?
Yes, absolutely. You have to, when you go into marriage, you should, it's like any healthy living in any community. You have to build relationships with people. Sometimes it is a personal responsibility to be successful in interpersonal relationships. You may have to get special skills. Some people are very successful and others are not because of their own manners and their weaknesses. When you marry in family, you have a responsibility to build a relationship with some families. Not every member of a family can be very negative, and you may even succeed to build good relationship with some family members that have not been successful with other marriages in that same family. You may go into a family of 5 boys, so you have 5 mbanyas. Some of them may not be doing well, but you, because of your personal skills and your competence, your ability to live in challenging situations like in other aspects of your life, can make you have a different relationship. And these things are built before, during the relationship, so that afterwards they will serve you. It can be very, very helpful for you to start by talking to the people that you are in tune with in the in-laws family, and then of course you may be surprised that they will be the one to call the family together and speak on your behalf. It is very possible that they can do that, but like we are saying, it is like being successful in anything in life. Skills are able to cut across situations. Just like suffering with raising your children, you have difficulties running your business. It is the same skills that you may put in place to be able to win your in-laws when there is a challenging situation. And that is where professional assistance may assist your willingness to succeed even in that challenge.
Okay, very interesting situation here. And now we are in love, and as a widow, if we decide not to get married, to stay on, but there's also this tendency for these widows to go after men. They say, I don't want to get married again, but they're chasing men out there.
Yes.
Which preferable?
Well, as a moralist, I would tell you it's preferable to get married. As a man of God, I prefer
because of like that, because they don't want to relinquish their husband's property, so
yes. They just hang around, satisfy their urge, and then I prefer you get married. You get married, and you can At least, biblically speaking, you are free to get because the law permits you to get married. But if at all you want to be toasting around, satisfying your stay on your husband's party, you may bring in you may bring in family now that don't come from husband. And you may end up being chased out of family because the family will be comfortable seeing that you are married to someone that they are aware than that you are going about bringing children into their late brother's property. That's one of the major challenges I think women who don't return the laws their husbands sometimes face. And you know that once you are not married, the family's eye is still on you. But once you are married, automatically their minds and their eyes from you. You can only check your children from time to time, and your bond with your children will never see. I want to believe that emotional intelligence is very, very, very powerful when it comes to the life of a widow. Sitting their age may not want to stay like that, but the circumstances around them may compel them to stay like that, especially some traditions of course. But because of that, they will rather stay like that to satisfy the masses publicly, meanwhile privately having their satisfaction sexually. In families will be comfortable to see you stay back home, take care of their brother's children in your affair outside. But for your own personal hygiene, I will advise you get married to somebody who will recognize you, who will appreciate you, and who will keep you as a wife. But fortunately, that's not the case. 90% or 80% of the widows, to be sincere, may stay in houses, but they are having their affairs outside. I'm talking as somebody who is in the neighborhood, and I've seen a lot carry out these same activities over and over and over and over. They stay in their little house, they have their children, but they have some man somewhere, they go there, pass the night, and then come back in because they are protecting the property of this man who died and left things behind. Besides, their children sometimes are still too young for them to abandon the children and go. They're behind the children to go to school. And because of that, so she has to stay back and refuse to get married, but she can satisfy herself. And that, to me, as a man of God, and us, that
she found herself sleeping around just she could make some money and then send the children to school and do other things. Meanwhile, if she was working when the husband was around, it would be easier for her to take care of the children. When I got to talk to her, I realized that she was really going through a lot because she didn't have the finances that it took, and unfortunately she ended up infecting herself and she died, and those children were stranded. So it's very advisable for women to acquire a skill and make sure they are doing something. And I say again that tomorrow is pregnant. Nobody knows the sex of the pregnancy.
Very, very pathetic situation there, but we are told that Mrs. Assange Yvette is on standby. Let us get her first intervention. Good evening, Mrs. Assange.
Hello, Mr. Liu. Good evening. Good evening to my co-panelists, Apostle Ambi. Welcome back. Good evening to televiewers. Looking at widows and widowhood and love life, I think it's a very important topic to exploit. I want to first of all sympathize with the widows. I understand that having going through a sudden loss of a spouse is not an easy thing to deal with. The pain sometimes is not something that words can describe, and it's something that equally no human being that have never gone through that could understand. So sometimes I understand that widowers define companionship with other widowers and widows because they have common understanding, and it's not easy. Honestly, it's not easy losing the spouse, and that's why sometimes I always tell couples that think of it like, what if your spouse dies today? Can you boldly tell your spouse that if I die today, please move on with your life and be happy? How many of us can truly say this? Like, for couples that are watching us today, can you boldly tell your spouse that if I die today, please move on with your life and be happy? I think this is some of the things that we should encourage in marriages today. Preparing your spouse that way could help them if anything happens. I mean, that is something that nobody knows when. You cannot tell when it can happen, how it can happen. If you are here in Bamenda, you understand that is something that we need to learn how to live with. I mean, you just get up, there's a corpse lying somewhere, That's Bamenda for us. You know. So Bamenda, I think this crisis has taught us one lesson. This life is nothing. Because you are with someone today, tomorrow they are not. You just hear that they are not there. They die. A corpse is sleeping here. A corpse is sleeping there. So I think one very difficult lesson that crisis has taught us, and reform crisis has taught us, is the aspect of understanding that anybody can go anytime, and so we need to learn how to live our lives even when one spouse goes. Okay, so like I said, it's a difficult thing. It's a very, very challenging moment for widows, and they are not just battling with losing someone, but they're also lonely. The aspect of them feeling lonely and the need for intimacy is always there. We are all humans. It's not easy to be with someone for maybe 5 years, 10 years, even it's just 2 years. I'll tell you the truth, even couples that spend most of their time quarreling, they can quarrel, but they cannot stay without each other. That's how funny marriage is, you know. And one thing I know for sure is for a man to marry a woman, it's difficult that a man will just marry any kind of woman and put at home. When it comes to marriage, most men take time to do what they think is the best. And so if you happen to live without who, you know, has been so close to you, how do you then cope? How do you then live a different life, loving again and all of that? Now, we want to look at the fact that the circumstances surrounding the death of that person matters. The relationship these people also had also equally matters. Because we have relationships where, I mean, some of the, let me say, I know of a relationship, I know of a widow right now who is even far happier than she was. I mean, the man was a whole lot of baggage to her. Like, he was cheating here and there, sleeping around, doing all sort of things. And he died. The woman has mourned. It's not even up to a year, but she has moved on. Not like moved on into another relationship, but I think she's quite happier than other widows. So the kind of relationship you have, the kind of relationship you had with your spouse, the circumstances surrounding their death. Maybe you saw them going through a lot of pains, and when they died, you saw that no, they're even rested. Okay, but if it's kind of sudden death, like I'm talking about here in Bamenda, if it's sudden death, it comes with a lot of shock. That sometimes, if it's not well managed, it can bring post-traumatic disorders. You know, you see people begin to behaving like they are not normal just because they could not bear, you know, dealing with pains. So every widower has his journey. It's not the same how long you should maybe, you know, grieve before moving on. It works differently for different people and for different reasons. Some people are strong enough to withstand the fact that okay, the other spouse is not there, but others find it completely unbearable. And for many, the truth is that if you want to love someone who is a widow or a widower, please be rest assured that the other spouse who is dead will always be part of you, because their names will constantly be mentioned from time to time. Mr. Joe, I'll come back for my second intervention.
Right, for that intervention, painting also a picture of what some persons are living out there. But Reverend Mrs. Akwi, now, can a woman who lost a husband, a young woman, actually tell the world that I am not in love with anybody? I'm just mourning my husband for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, Mr. Leo, it depends on the woman's emotional temperament and composition. Mm-hmm. There are people who can stay like that and they will not be pushed nor be moved when they have taken their decisions. Mm-hmm. And there are some that will take it, but circumstances may drown them. Like the case Ma said, that woman, maybe she was not a widow, but was she a widow? She was, yes. So she was now sleeping around because probably she waited and nobody came. I'm not justifying her irrational behavior though, but some may make that decision, and it comes to a point where the substance that they need to support the family is no longer there. The emotional protection that they need is not there. The nights are cold and there is nobody to share the end of your day with, and they will discover that maybe they made such a decision in a rush, and they were rash for that matter, and they may decide to finally change the decision, because we human beings, sometimes we are whimsical. You may be taking a decision at the spur of that moment because of the pain, because of the trauma, and in the years to come, after the grief has passed, for the 2 years that the grief is ebbing away, and you come to the conclusion that probably you were hasty in taking that decision. They are human beings. Like I used to crack jokes with my friends that na carpenter clean some man was a person a stick. You know, sometimes you take these jokes because you may have loved your husband so much and you want to respect his memory. However, when the pain is ebbing, you are still a human being, and in that capacity of a human being with your frailty, you may need a companion. But like sister said, we do not catch men as if you are a fisherman catching a fish. They are the ones to approach you, and when they come, you may want to judge from their character. Is this one caring? Will this one be there for me? Not necessarily for my children, first for my own emotional stability and stamina. And if you are sure that the one will be there for you, why not? You are still young, you are still agile. It's unlike my mom when my dad died, and then when she traveled, since she went for treatment with my younger man in Britain, and the white started talking to her, she told me as a joke, when I asked her that, Mama, will you not settle down again? She was like, Flo, for my age, my go start wear some my clothes again, start walk all over. I said, it cannot work. I understood. We just laughed, and I know she was joking. In her situation, to be realistic now, is because of her age. She's in her 60s, and she will not want to encumber herself again with the workload of marital life, be the physical and the emotional part of it. But as a young lady, you are agile and you still have a long way to go. It's like I said before, weigh the pros and the cons. Is this going to stabilize me in every wise? Is this man deserving? Am I deserving of him? Then why not? To take a drastic decision overnight because of the pain you are going through is not the best. And it is also very plausible that you seek professional help, especially after the pain has ebbed. You seek professional help and counseling, and they may help you to align your goals to that of somebody who is seeking your hand in marriage again. If not, if you think that you will be there for your children and you want to cater for them judiciously without the interference and interruption of a man, there is no big deal. At the end of the day, sir, it is the woman's decision. It is her prerogative to decide whether or not she wants to move ahead, she wants to fall in love, or she wants to stay put. It also depends on the criteria around her. Is she having children? Is she still young? Will she be capable? If she can and if she could, then why not? I think she should move ahead.
She should move ahead. Now, in considering those to settle down with, yes, Lloyd, what are the things that as a widow you should consider? What type of a man should you consider, if at all you are moving on?
Yes, you should consider the fact that you have children, and at that moment your children are going to be referred to as stepchildren. How, when you see the way the man interacts with you and interact with the children at that moment, you'll be able to judge how can I say this man loves my children. Is my children, are they his priority? Can he help me in bringing up these children? Because those are some of the challenges that widows will go through when they get married again. When you have children again for the husband you've just gotten married to, but you had children before getting married to this man, and sometimes it start bringing problems because the discrimination. Yeah, you don't want to pay these fees because this one is not your biological child. I had this child, so you want to know if this man is capable of putting the family together, despite the fact that I had these children before getting married. You also want to know if this man can truly bring happiness, because some of those men will come to instead cause you more pain. So you want to know if you are his priority. You want to know if this man is coming because of the wealth, or if this man is coming because he truly loves you. When you relate with a man, you'll be able to tell if he's a good man. Is he God-fearing? Does he prioritize me? Where do I fall? You know, in the scale of preference, where am I? Then you'll be able to know if you can move ahead, go on and get married to him or not.
Yeah, but how long should you mourn if you are to decide to move on? At what point should you say, okay, I've mourned enough?
I think that it has nothing to do with anybody. You know, we like I said, build your relationship before and inside, and let the inside build the after. How you interact with your husband, and if you have not been doing, start discussing these things now, or question whether you have a husband. You know, these are the things that make you know that I have a friend, I have a brother, or I have a father, I have one part of me with me in this relationship. And of course, how long you have to mourn may be a process in which there is a transition, because the fact that you are married doesn't mean you are not still mourning. You know, it will be so limited for anybody to come into somebody who has lost a dear one and believe that the fact I've taken off the sackcloth, it doesn't mean the memory or the loss or the feelings are all gone. You have to integrate it, like we've been saying. But what I've tried to make us as humans, when we are on earth, if your mission on earth was to mourn somebody, then morning and you will attain your goal that way. If you can come to this world and you think that you have a purpose here, and that these articulations that come are just like instruments that are supposed to galvanize you to your objective, which is your mission. It's not your child, it's not your husband, it's nobody. It is about you. And this strength, we don't always build it when we are alive. We are more attached to these things about what people say, how we physically feel, and so on. And again, we are talking more like if we are young. No, even if you are 80 years, you have the right to experience that dream husband or that dream wife that maybe all the other ones were. And even if it was the third time you are getting married, I mean, it should be a new beginning. Because actually marriage is supposed to be a hope for something better, and you have to live it. So I will encourage you, make yourself marriageable. Ma will say that the men have to come. No, make them come. Make yourself irresistible. Make yourself so sweet and charming that people don't even hear when you say you are a widow, because they are already carried over. It's very important that we see life as an opportunity to move forward in achieving those goals that we accompany our soul out of this place. And these different elements, we shouldn't be too worried, because your intentions are the most important thing. What you go to bed with at the end of the day, how peacefully you sleep, based on how your function is what is more important than all the articulations around.
Okay, we take the second intervention from Mr. Sanji. Yvette from Bamenda.
So having a relationship with a widow or a widower, sometimes it can be very challenging. Yeah, not just about maybe what the people outside think of, but even to the relationship itself. Now let's look at what people think. You will understand, you bear with me that most people mix up a divorce and someone being a widow or a widower. You know, they look at it like it's kind of the same thing, but those are not the same circumstances. They are not the same thing. They are quite different. I mean, a divorcee is someone who thought through the process of, you know, leaving their marriage, maybe for a better life that they think of. Of course, they always think of, okay, no, I think I'm better off than being in this marriage. So a divorcee is someone who has thought through the process of terminating the marriage, went through the process of terminating the marriage, and actually terminated the marriage. That was a kind of conscious decision, conscious efforts to do that. And so they are divorced today. So some of them, even though divorce still comes with pains, you know, sometimes the divorcees they battle a lot with living without the other spouse, but they quickly move on than someone who has lost, you know, a loved one to the cold hands of death. So you see that for someone who has lost maybe a loved one to the cold hands of death, maybe they died suddenly. the pain that comes with it is enormous. I mean, it is something that can, some will tell you that it felt like the world has opened up its mouth and swallowed them. It's like the spouse took half of them away. The void, the gap, the space that the spouse that has died has left in them, sometimes it's not, it cannot be replaced. That is why most people that go dating, when you date a widow or a widower, you always find them talking about their their late spouse, late husband or late wife. I mean, in a case where their relationship was good. Okay, when I say good, it's not like I'm saying that it was perfect, because marriages, of course, will always have challenges, conflicts from time to time. But if you see a spouse who will constantly bring up, I mean, for 10 years, for even more years, you see people confess that I've dated a widow or a widower for this length of time, and their spouse's name comes up almost daily, on a daily basis. That means they talk about their late husband or their late wife almost every day. And that is why it will interest everybody. If you're listening to us, you're watching us today, know that if you have to date a widow or a widower, you must be emotionally matured. It needs a lot of emotional maturity and a lot of patience, because most of them, it takes maybe forever, to live and completely forget that this person was part of their lives. It takes almost forever. So you constantly hear the names of their late spouse coming up. You constantly hear them talking about their favorite. I mean, people have even said they went to the shopping mall or supermarket, and they found themselves picking favorites of what the late wife or late husband loved. They still sit home and feel like, oh, she's coming or he's coming. The funny reality is that some of them even live in denial, like, no, he's not gone, she's not gone. They will come back one day. And so sometimes it's really, like, to be honest, it's having another relationship to a widow, to a widower, it looks like a second kind of marriage, because you cannot tell that if you ever think that you can replace the late spouse, you are making a serious mistake. You're coming in like a second, just know that you're coming in like a second spouse, either a second husband or a second wife, because you can never be a replacement. What they shared, memories they had, a lot of things, it cannot be replaced. So dealing with widows or widowers is not for the weak. Marriage is not for the weak. Marriage is not for the weak. And having a relationship with a widow or a widower is not even for the weak. You must be very patient with them, tolerant with them, because there are times that they will still go back into their normal grieving process. When they listen maybe to his favorite music or her favorite music or her favorite song, they will still start grieving afresh. It's a it's a lifelong process of grieving. So if you want to date someone who is a widow or a widower, you should be rest assured for this, because expect this and even more, and be ready to cope with it. And I think even sometimes moving on to, for a widow or widower to move on to, is sometimes made difficult by the children who themselves are still grieving. That's why you see someone wants to come in to love their mother or their father. They're like, no, we don't want this person, we don't want this auntie, we don't want this uncle. Is that difficult?
Thank you, Mr. Sanji. Yvette, she's bringing up a point which tells that if you were to settle down with, you were to engage a widow in love, there are certain things you should put into consideration, Dr. Apostle Ambe Valentine, because you should know that there was already somebody you are coming in as a second person, and you will need to also live with some of
the memories.
Yes.
Of course, it has to do with the emotional attachment the person had with the previous partner. Mm-hmm. Because there are some persons that when they died to their wives, they were delivered from something. Memory of the man is no longer in them. As a mother, they cannot even think of the man anymore. To them, some kind of redemption has come. In cases like that, for instance, if the man who is coming in is doing well than the person you were married to, because there are some marriages you enter is suffering, hunger, difficulties. You got married at that state thinking that things will get better as the days go by, but things kept rotating on the same spot. So that frustration, sometimes you begin to even wish death for the partner. And sometimes when it happens that the man dies, the woman cannot publicly say it, but deep down within her, finally, I'm out of this mess. Then someone comes in. They may never think of the person again. They may do it for, how do I put it, to convince the population that they were in love with the person. But they are comfortable with this new person because the person has come bringing some certain level of hope and some certain level of confidence in their lives. That's one thing. Secondly, some people also got married under very, very complicated circumstances. There are women who are forced into the house of certain men. And when they step into such relationships, it becomes very complicated. They only manage their way through. When the man dies, to them is some kind of a deliverance also. The opportunity has come for them to make the choice of the right partner that I've always wished to have. That's one other thing. In that situation, when the woman dies, the woman does not keep married that kind of person. But we're talking about persons who walked together, grew up together, established a family together. They were friends. They were intimate. When such a person dies, sometimes the partner refuses to get married again, or if at all they will get married, their memories never escape the minds of the partner who is alive. For instance, you may be in bed making love to her, and then she's calling by the previous man's name. I'm telling you the kind of bond people share. Yeah. They call the other person's name, depending on the kind of bond they share. And sometimes, from time to time, you may offer the person a gift you appreciate with the person who is dead. It tells you the level of bond that they have. Now, if at all you are getting married to a widow, you should be prepared for circumstances like that. Not because they do it deliberately. It has to do with the bond that they share with the person that died.
You should also be ready to face some interventions from time to time.
Of
from
course.
The family,
yes,
of
the former husband. Also, there are situations where you will provoke the widow. She will want to bring up the memorable moment she had with that previous person. She will want to tell that when I had my man, I didn't go through this. You should be ready also. But we advise widows also, don't carry your frustrations to your new marriage. Don't go and begin to compare the man you have now with the man who is dead. Because if that is how you want to do, pack your things and go back to the grave of the man you had. Or better, refuse to get married completely. Because some women will come to your life, they want to keep telling you about the XXX. We have had cases on this platform where people will call and say they are married right now, but they cannot forget more of their ex. When they are in bed with their husband, what they think is how their ex is to handle them. All these things put together, they are things that are registered into their psyche. And because of that, they subconsciously store this information. When circumstances arise around them, the thing begin to pop up. You start doing compare and contrast between two men. And once you do that, automatically you make the person who is available inferior and make him unqualified or disqualified. So those are the things that sometimes when you are getting married to a widow, you should be ready also, because we are now talking of widow getting married. We are not talking of those who are getting married to a widow. The challenge is on both sides. The person who is getting married to a widow and the widow who is getting married, these two parties have serious challenges. Because this woman who is getting married after spending life with somebody for about 10 to 15 to 20 years, then you are coming into the woman's life in circumstances that you will treat her that does not tally with that of her previous husband. You begin to face challenges because she will be comparing you and the person always. Then you as a man also who is getting married to this widow, you want sometimes you realize that you are constantly under comparison with some other person you don't even know about. You understand? She may even compare you psychologically without uttering words, and then swing her mood and begin to react strangely. You may doubt what's going on, failing to understand that the person that was in that life pampered some things you are not pampering. Because not every man has the same temperament. There's some men that will react to something differently as compared to where other person will react. So probably she had a man that when she does her rubbish, the man will just smile over it. Then you come in every little error, you put a finger on it. That brings another problem. She will now begin to live in regret. And sometimes people like that broke out of those relationships and refuse to get married again forever. Because probably they feel like, I will never find a man like the man I ever had. And I've heard widows who will tell me that when I look around, I don't think I've seen any person that I can really marry to, because I can get married to, because I feel like the person that understood me properly, who could handle my weaknesses, who could handle my challenges properly, is no longer there. So they devote their life to remain widows forever. Well, that should be their choice. But nobody on earth can enjoy loneliness. Nobody enjoys loneliness. Even the ladies who are still to get married, they are feeling that loneliness. Everybody, even God in heaven said it's not good for a man to be alone. So loneliness is something that is not even accepted.
Okay, loneliness.
Let me share the experience with us. I was invited as guest speaker in one conference. That conference had to do with baby mamas and widows. Okay. So there was a woman in that conference. I assumed that all the women there were supposed to be widows. After the conference, I realized that that woman's husband is still very much alive. So I went into conversation with her, and then she made me understand that the husband does virtually not. In fact, she wishes that the husband is dead. So she attends widow meetings with widows, considering the fact that she's not in good relationship with the husband. So she started telling me things like the husband does not pay school fees, they do not have a cordial relationship. So when you see a man dies, the length of time that woman uses to mourn that man will tell you the relationship that the woman actually had with the man. So in a case where the relationship was very cordial, that woman would take a longer period before falling in love again. But when you see a woman getting married quickly, it means that marriage was not really working out. Yes, was not really working. As we said, that some people even die like that, and it facilitates things for the women, because some of them are in bondage, like living in marriage, but they're actually living in bondage.
Okay, but Reverend, she earlier raised a point that even when you are a widow, you should not go seeking for men. The men should come for you. But for men to come, you need to also make yourself attractive. Yes, because bees will go to a flower that has nectar. Huh? So yeah, but there is this tendency for a widow to just abandon themselves and think that, okay, it's the end of the world, but yet expect and are wondering why nobody shows attention, or shows attention towards them.
Actually, bees go to flowers with beautiful petals, and then it's in the attraction of the petals that they discover the nectar.
Okay.
So this just boils down to the fact that women, like Ba Changong said earlier, you need to look attractive and you need to mingle. I am on one of these fun time platforms, and then I cracked a joke one day and people were laughing. I said that this is we are getting towards Christmas, and this is when most of those mothers that you usually do not greet them in church, you should start greeting them. And if you are the type who used to frown, you should start smiling, because suitors are around the corner. And many laughed at the joke, but it had some undertones, because as a widow, we know you are mourning, we know that you are going through pain. But you would discover, I know of young widows that as soon as the husband, as soon as the husband died, just about a few months, she casted off the white, she was hanging out, drinking, going to clubs. I was like, instead, I was not very comfortable. She was like really dressing up, looking attractive, but the span at which she did that was not up to 3 months that the husband died. Maybe it boils down to the fact, like Malovette says, that sometimes these widows, when they live in bondage, and instead of a marriage is a mirage, they may be forced to celebrate and turn into the category of happy widows when their husbands die. But let's come back to this state of attractiveness. I know that beauty lies in the eyes of a beholder, but as a woman generally, not even a widow, you need to look good always. You must take care of your personal hygiene. There are some women, especially when they think that they have already gotten married, they have arrived, they can put on this hair nets for the rest of the day. They don't change them. When they are at home, they just put on this crazy looking cabas. They are running helter skelter for them. They have settled down, and so they don't need to look attractive. Even when your husband is there, you need to be attractive. You need to take care of your personal hygiene, especially your oral hygiene, for that attractiveness to be there. Psychologists will tell you that men are attracted with what they see and women are attracted with what they hear, but both are attracted with the scent. So we have that animalistic tendency of being attracted to each other's scent. So as a widow, if you are striving for a man, I know we as Africans, it may be difficult sometimes to approach a man, but you have to be, if you are already in need of settling down, you have to mingle. You have to be in the places where you could meet men, and not just men, responsible men. Good restaurants, once in a while, hang out. Don't just sit. Your country meetings, church, all those social joints where people meet and tangle. That is where you should be. You dress well, you look smart, not dressing overly sexily that maybe all your cleavages will be outside. So you are not for sale, but you want to, men are chasers by nature, and if you think that you can just give a man at once everything he needs, that respect will go down to zero. But when you take your time and you be yourself, and even if there is that attractiveness, don't be overly excited. Take it step by step. And like Apostle said, sometimes you will discover that you recline, you go back, you decline and go back to you think about the former, forgetting that you are in the latter. So you must also work with your coach, your counselor, that I am prepared to settle, not just the physical attraction. I am prepared to settle. How can I prepare my mind emotionally? Be sure that you are well prepared psychologically, physically, and emotionally. The physical preparation is your physical presentation, looking good within your means and your reach, and looking neat, most importantly. And psychologically, prepare yourself that you may not be able to meet the same kind of man, but you may be able to cope. So you must look for coping mechanisms and strategies to flow in the next relationship. But most importantly, remember that men are chasers. You cannot do the chasing. A lion does not eat meat that has been killed by another animal. Rather, it leaves it eats the important parts and leaves the carcass for the hyenas and other scavengers. So we need to not just stay put anyways, but we need to take care of ourselves, build up our physical, build up our emotional, so that we'll be stable enough when the next person comes.
Okay. Please, Mr. Leo, ask Dr. Apostle, what if the husband is still alive and he is not playing his responsibility? Can we call the woman widow in that case? Sure, the man is still alive. So a widow is when you lost your... Yeah, you just like the example you just yes. It's not possible.
A widow is a woman who has lost her husband. That's the English definition.
Okay.
Yes.
As long as the man is still alive, even if he doesn't provide, she's not a widower.
Okay.
She's not a widower.
She's not a widow. Yeah, you were going to add to what was...
No, I just wanted to say that, first of all, why did we have to create names? You know, the stigmatization starts with the fact that you call somebody a widow.
A widow. Okay.
Why is it necessary to call somebody a divorcee and all of that stuff? Why do you call some child a bastard, or that he came out of... Who decides for a child to come? He comes in with the same number of chromosomes like the one born in whatever situation. A widower still has the same number of chromosomes, has living like a normal. It is not written on their faces. So we should look at the wisdom that lies behind this labeling that is in human nature. So this labeling itself, was it intended to give strength or to make these people fragile and make them vulnerable? What was the wisdom behind the fact that you just get up someday, you have a name, and they add a name to it based on a situation, unfortunately, an unfortunate situation that happens to you? So when you look at the spirit behind most of these things, you realize that it's actually not healing. It's actually pulling the man down. But if it was meant to give special attention in somebody in a fragile situation, then that situation at least should expire, because you can be in that fragile situation when you are going through the traumas of that. There's a time when you actually go out of it, yet this name stay with you. And even when you get married, they tell you it was the widow of this person who got married to this. And when you look at the people who discuss this more, they are the more frustrated and the most down to earth humiliated people, less successful people who do that. So I want to
So
say
the stigma starts with the naming.
yes, it starts with the naming. There shouldn't have been any naming for widow, bastard, or whatever, divorcee, and all of that. It doesn't make any sense, because or an orphan and all of that, because these are people who nothing has changed in their genetic constitution, nothing has changed in their mental state and all of that. So I wish to say that it goes down to the way we raise human beings. If our homes are healthy, if we build girls to grow as normal human beings, even in all challenging situations, they come out grounded. If you have emotional challenges during the marriage, you will have more challenges when you have lost your partner and you have to manage the after marriage. It is the same thing when you are grounded and you have a vision about your life, your purpose, and it is not limited on the material body security aspect, because you have something to provide. You go into the marriage with something to provide. You will have a more balanced and matured way to handle any challenge that is coming up after that relationship. And it is in the same way you can manage a new relationship without being a frustration or embarrassment to the person who comes into your life. Your life will always be a provider for life in any situation you are, because you have nurtured life in you, you have nurtured energy, and you are a provider. You will always provide.
And there's an aspect I want us to also look at, this idea of widows going after other people's husbands. Yes, we've not looked at that. I wanted to advise that if you are a widow, it is not anybody's fault that your husband is dead. So I advise widows to also allow people's husbands in peace, because
is it people's husbands? Is it people's husband rushing after widows?
The tendency is that
but when they come, you should refuse.
Yes,
of those who
they refuse her.
under their armpits like this, and there is no turning back.
It becomes so challenging, because you know, when you're a widow, it means that your age, maybe you're elderly, you hardly find a single man. So most often you will have married men coming around you. So I just want to encourage the widows to build that mechanism, you know, that defensive mechanism. You can still get a man. It must not necessarily be somebody else's husband. If you're going to somebody else's husband, that man is not going to, the man is not coming to get married to you, but you know you are just putting that man's family, you know, into squabbles. So I advise widows too, let us also mourn and allow other people's marriages to.
They should just mourn because people are married, or
no,
generally for.
I'm saying that
other people's marriages.
Yes. Because the Reverend emphasized on the fact that they should get married, but now we should also say they should allow other women, other people's husbands alone.
When you say they should allow, are they going after the boys?
Normally the men will normally come, but when you build a defensive mechanism, you know, I mean, like to turn down.
It's love. Somebody, you see somebody and
it's love for somebody's husband.
I think that you go after husbands or whatever because you can go. You could have been doing it before.
Because you'll not be married. They'll not be getting married.
It is not because she's a widow that she goes. She could be comfortable having a relationship even when the husband was alive.
Who tells you that relationship was not already existing even when the husband was alive?
So it's not because you are mourning, it's not because you are in pain that you not allow another woman to be comfortable in her home.
It's an assumption.
What tells you that as you are there with your husband?
I want the women to know, like I said.
Logical, when you say the widows are going after men, is it the men who are going after them, or
it is always men who go after the women? But must we just accept anything, even if the man is married, because it's the men that go after? So if the man is coming after you,
statistically speaking, in the African society, most widows become very vulnerable.
Yes, but we
don't live in an advanced economy where women are financially independent. As a matter of fact, marriage is more of a job opportunity than an employment in Africa. So when the man that looks like employer is dead, it looks like the job is dead. The woman becomes too vulnerable, and anybody that comes into her life to give her succor within that moment acts like a shield and becomes a solution. So they don't just see you as a husband, they see you as a solution to their problem. And nobody can be in problem and deny solution. We just have to be really nobody can be in problem, deny the solution of that problem right in front of them.
The man.
Yeah, maybe come and cream that person. I have asked this question. A man that has no lost his wife is called a widower. A woman that lost her husband is called a widow. A man that has no child and a wife, they say are childless. What about a man and a woman who have lost all their children? How do they call them?
Childrenless.
Let's just take the last intervention from Ms. Asanji, Yvette, and then we wrap up with the program. Area.
Talking about the stigma, I think this is one of the challenges that you're going to face, especially with friends and family in particular. Now, let's say that in a case where you as a widow or a widower, you're trying to move on, you want to really be happy, you want to find happiness, because this one depends now on your mindset. Not every couple, not every widow or widower has this type of mindset. Some feel so swallowed up in darkness that they don't appreciate light anymore. They know some have accepted the fact that they will never find love, they will never find a replacement, they will never be happy. So some look at life like, okay, their own happiness has come to an end, their world has come to an end, they're just there now. And then sometimes the responsibilities they carry, it kind of overshadows them, because whatever your spouse doing, no matter how small, it ends up not being part of what you're supposed to do. So you're not doing just what you're supposed to do as a parent, you're doing double of what you're supposed to do over your kids, in your home, in your life. You have no support, no one to turn to or look up to. You have no one to talk to. Sometimes just talking about what you're feeling is relieving. It's what happens in marriage when couples go back, or something happens, you want to call your spouse and tell your spouse, hey babe, you will not believe what happened. And then something has happened. You want to call spouse, hey honey, you don't know what has happened. Then you realize that, oh, you are just all alone. It's a difficult to deal with. So sometimes some of the stigma will even come from family. You have come to an understanding that this is marriage. You enjoy the life you live together with your spouse. Now the life has to move on. But families are still grieving for their son or their daughter. And again, that depends if they were maybe let's say it was the only son or the only daughter. They might grieve even forever. And then now looking at you trying to be happy, committing a serious crime that is punishable under the Cameroon Penal Code. They'll be like, we lost our daughter, and then the wife, you as the wife or the husband, you're trying to be happy. How possible? Sometimes it is even the family that will make it difficult for the widows. Now, I don't have a problem with the widows or widowers moving on and finding love. I know that it's always difficult. People will always have fears of, what happened to this other spouse? What killed this spouse? Was it STDs? Was it witchcraft? Questions. Man, we need companionship. We need love. We need intimacy. Yes, when I say intimacy here, it's not just about the sexual part of it, but we need even a physical intimacy. You being with someone, touching them, having them sit on you, on your laps, talking with them. That's physical intimacy. So people need this intimacy. I don't have a problem with it, but I have a problem with widows going about, or widowers going about dating other people's husbands. I have a problem with that, because I've had a good number of those cases coming to my table of recent. Like a widow will tell a wife at home, I will share this husband with you. Like, she's so bold. It's like, is the other woman the cause of your misfortune? I'm sorry if this is hard, but if I push someone to think that way, why are you kind of like transferring your pains, your aggressions, your frustrations on the wife of someone whose husband has not died? You might feel you might feel like you're not fortunate, you're not lucky enough to be in this world. But why put the pains, why put someone else to go through the same pains that you are going through? And even if they have to go through that pains, it can never be the same. So if you want to find love, I know we have widows maybe in their early 30s or 40s. Yeah, they've just reached maybe that level where even they're even more sexually active and stuff. Yeah, they should go look for love. I don't have a problem. But please don't go date other people's husbands or other people's wives. Let marriages be. If you really want to find love, we have single people out there. find love with any other person out there, and that will be absolutely okay, but not destroying another person's marriage. Thank you, Mr. Leo.
Very much, Mr. Sanji Yvette, and it's time for us to call it a wrap from the studios out here. I will just give us 10 seconds. One last word to those who are watching us, especially to our sisters, widows.
Thank you, my fellow panelists. It was a wonderful evening, and to my widows out there, both the younger and older ones and women in general, you are special, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. Go for what makes you happy, and know that happiness comes from you. Nobody else can do it for you the way you do it yourself. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to our audience. I just want to say that if you are a widow, please lay a good foundation. Do the right things, and always take note that whatever decision that you take, there are always consequences. So take the right thing and take the right decisions and do the right things.
Okay, Mr. Emmanuel, thank you.
Well, I just want to say that even if it was you, the cause of your husband's death, if you are still alive, you have an opportunity to correct it and live a better life. So there is no situation that is, a calamity once we are still alive. And for those others, the name widow can as well disappear. Somebody gave it to you, you can refuse to live like one. You are a human being. You have everything of any other person standing opposite you. So you can just live a normal and progressive life based on your calling.
Okay, Dr. Apostle, thank you for coming.
Yes, our widows out there, widowhood is not a curse. Widowhood is not a stigma. As a matter of fact, there's life after losing your husband. Don't reduce yourself to something lesser than you used to be. Before you got married to that man, you were you. When the man died, you are still you. So nothing has changed. Walk with the same decorum, the same dignity, the same respect, and the same confidence you used to have. Being a widow is not a curse. You are just unfortunate.
Okay. Thank you to you, Cheyunde Gerard, watching us from Kongsamba. Chris Didimus, also watching us from Kongsamba. And for Judenes, watching us from Bonaberi. Ngure Nicholas is watching us from Mbu Bakundu. Jacob Ngatibamo says he's watching us from somewhere around Koto here. Koto is in Douala. Menka Michael Michelle says I'm watching from Gambetika. Yonye Lenui is watching us from Suzarene. Kum is watching from Womb. Wheezy Ihims is watching from Bonaberi. Samson Johnson is watching us from Nigeria. Melon Lovet is watching us from Bonaprizo in Douala. Njongbong is watching us from Yaoundé Essos. Zappa Killian Cat is watching us from Kumba. Clifford Keko is watching us from Bamenda. Debon Haddison, good evening. I wish to ask Pastor Ambe, is Sunday the Bible? What is exactly the Sabbath day? Okay. Anya Freedom Ranking says I'm watching us. You guys are from Mile 7 Mancon. That's in Bamenda. And Casey Patience, Casey is watching us from Womb. Weto Melville Lagbane is watching us from Bafusam. Ken Ash is watching us from Mundongo Bomboko. Wow. Zamatu Jivir is watching us from Old Town in Bamenda. Zapmo Raisa is watching us from Douala. Bamenda Culture says I'm watching from Chua Binju. That should be in Donga Mantung Division. Dinui Clotilde is watching us from Bamenda. Elvis Ngo Tezo is watching us from Yaoundé. Lawi Adrians is watching us from Yaoundé Oza. Linus Wainbobo Ebi is watching us from the capital city, that's in Yaoundé. Anjim Arabella is watching us from Yaoundé. Mohamed Figo is watching us from Yaoundé. Monte Chapelle Obili. Chance Kebe Bright always watching us from Kumba. We want to thank you all for watching tonight's edition of the program. Eli and Desmond, we are very grateful for your production. And to all of you, we can only say, stay blessed. Bye-bye.